Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. There's a lot of reaction from both the left and the right to Donald Trump's speech last night before Congress. At least one Democrat melted down on Twitter, even claiming Hitler must have written the speech. We'll talk to him in a minute. Also, former Dirty Jobs host Mike Rowe has a new plan to fix America's employment crisis. He shared that plan with Congress and the president. He'll be here to share it with us in just a minute. But first, we're now a full 2 months into the 115th Congress. How well have Republicans done with their unified control of both houses plus the presidency, the entire government? Well, so far, they passed no major legislation, haven't held a hearing for Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch, and still have not confirmed 4 of the president's cabinet picks. More meaningfully, perhaps, they also haven't confirmed dozens of political appointees you have never heard of, but who are critical for running the government. The Senate's been in session for 57 days so far. They've already taken 22 days off. They'll have a massive 2-week break in April, too. What exactly is going on up there? Senator John Cornyn is the Senate Majority Whip. As Whip, his job is to win Senate votes by keeping Republican senators in line. Senator Cornyn of Texas joins us now. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So we checked the record of the Obama administration in its first couple of months in office in early 2009 against the record here. Now, Obama had a Democratic Congress, as you know. So by March 1st, 8 years ago, the Congress had passed and the president had signed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. They'd renewed S-CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program. They'd signed a $831 billion stimulus bill. And, of course, the Congress had approved the president's plan for withdrawing from Iraq. They'd done an awful lot. This Congress, Republican Congress, doesn't seem to have done much at all. Why hasn't anything been done so far exactly?
Well, the main reason is because Democrats have been dragging their feet on nominations and burning up time. For example, Ryan Zinke was approved by a substantial supermajority today. Wilbur Ross by, I think, 72 votes last night.
Right.
There's no reason to deny the president his cabinet other than just to burn up time and make it impossible for us to turn to other legislation. So it's enormously frustrating, but this is the way the system unfortunately operates when people are determined to drag their heels.
So why so much time off then? Why does the Senate take so much time off? 40% of the days since this Congress convened, the Senate has not been working. In April, according to the Senate calendar, you guys are only working for 10 days the entire month. If it's taking more time than expected, then why not work more?
Well, we didn't get a president until January the 20th, and that's about 5 weeks ago, roughly. And yes, we were in session for most of that time. We did take a week to return home. I took a number of my colleagues to the border, thinking it was important, with all the attention given to border security and trade and taxes and the like, to take some of my colleagues from North Carolina and Nevada to learn more about the important relationship, economic relationship we have with Mexico because of bilateral trade. And those are the kinds of things you do when we're not in session. So it's I dare say it's not taking time off.
Well, and I don't think you all are lazy. I don't mean to suggest that. I just mean that there's a new government elected in November, and they can't govern because they can't get their people appointed. As you know, I mean, I've spoken to people at the cabinet level who say, my guys aren't going to get confirmed until the middle of the summer, till July. I mean, that's kind of a crisis. So why not forestall the trip to Mexico and just get the government installed? Wouldn't that be a better course?
Well, there is a problem in that many of the sub-cabinet nominees have not yet been nominated, and so there is nothing for the Senate to operate on. I'm hopeful that the White House will accelerate the nomination process and get them to us so we can take them up and confirm them. But you're right. It's enormously frustrating to all of us, but it's a combination of both obstruction on the Democratic side and at least so far, the administration not getting these sub-cabinet appointees to us for confirmation.
But, I mean, you all could just drop the hammer on the Democrats and do it, couldn't you?
Well, we can't make the White House nominate sub-cabinet nominees. We can grind through the cabinet-level nominees, and we literally have been doing it. Under the Senate rules, we can get to about 3 a week when they are obstructing as they are now. And again, this is part of their relitigation, I guess, of their loss on November the 8th. They simply have not gotten beyond the denial and now anger. Sooner or later, I think they're going to have to reconcile themselves to the fact that they lost to the election and then try to be productive.
Well, I mean, I'm no PhD in Senate order, but you could force this stuff. You could just do it. You have the votes, don't you? Settled in states if the governor opposes it. Do Republicans in leadership support those efforts, do you think?
Well, I think by and large we are supportive of the administration's positions, but the bills that you mentioned, of course, died at the end of the Obama administration,
right?
Had to be refiled, and so they have to go through the committee process. Part of why the Judiciary Committee is delayed now is because we're working and anticipating the confirmation of Judge Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. Other committees are working primarily on the Obamacare repeal and replace, which will take place in the coming few weeks. That's been our focus, along with tax reform, which we plan to do shortly after that. So I share with you your frustration about the slow pace. Unfortunately, a lot of that's built into the process, but
right.
We're determined to get some important things done.
So, reassure Republicans who voted for Trump that none of this is being slow-walked. I know a lot of people who work on Capitol Hill who are Republicans who did not vote for Donald Trump. They voted for Hillary Clinton. Some of them are in your office, by the way. Are you sure that your staff, it's true, are you sure that your staff and the staff of other leaders on the Republican side in the Senate and the House are really supportive of this agenda?
We are fully supportive of President Trump and his agenda, and we're trying to do our best to help him. He's new to governing, and we all understand that. That's one reason he got elected, because people thought he would bring change to the way Washington operates, and he already has. So we fully support the president's agenda, and we're working with him. Had lunch over at the White House today with the speaker, the majority leader of both houses, trying to figure out how to advance the president's agenda and get it accomplished. And we are on that path as I speak.
Well, part of his agenda is building a wall. He campaigned on it. Your state voted for him in part because of that. And then you were quoted the other day saying you're not for a wall and the people of Texas are not for a wall. What gives you that impression, considering I think you won your state 9 points, something like that, pretty definitive win, running on the wall? Why would you think your voters would not be for that?
Well, the Texas border, and one reason I took my colleagues to Texas was to show them this 1,200-mile border, some of which has 3,500-foot cliffs in the Big Bend area where no wall is really necessary. There are other areas where infrastructure is important, barriers, if you say, so to speak, but it's really a combination of personnel, technology, and infrastructure. We're working right now with the Department of Homeland Security to come up with a plan to actually implement the president's goal of securing the border. It's long overdue, and I fully support that. We intend to try to make that happen.
But he said, not to be a stickler on semantics, but he said, I want a wall. I want a big, beautiful wall. That was from the first day of his campaign until last. I want a wall. So why would you think that voters in your state, exempting like the cliffs, but for the rest of the border, why wouldn't they want a wall too? Didn't they vote for that?
I don't think I think they voted for border security. How we accomplish that, I think they expect us to use our best judgment to try to accomplish. It's really just a matter of political will. We know how to do it. The problem has been we haven't had a president who actually believed in border security. We do now, and we're fully trying to support and implement that effort together with interior enforcement, which represents people who come in and overstay, represent 40% of illegal immigration, and we don't do nearly enough to discourage that.
Right. So, no, for sure. So you think your voters,
with the president,
when they voted for Trump, they weren't voting for the wall he promised. They're voting for Republican senators to figure out how to secure the border, but they didn't really mean a wall when they voted for a guy who promised a wall?
They expect us to use our best judgment and our experience to accomplish that goal, I think. And a wall, I have to tell you, Tucker, is not going to stop illegal immigration if you don't have the personnel on the ground to catch them, if you don't have the technology, the eyes in the sky in order to detect them, so Border Patrol can actually get there in time. There are places where a physical barrier is entirely appropriate, and we ought to be putting them there, but we ought to come up with the right combination that allows us to accomplish the goal efficiently and effectively without wasting taxpayer dollar. That's been my goal.
Okay. Senator Cornyn, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, this is a Fox News alert. Leaders in the House of Representatives have set the parameters for the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. According to a 6-page document agreed upon by the top members of the House Intelligence Committee, the investigation will seek to determine what ties, if any, existed between the Russian government and U.S. presidential campaigns, as well as what actions the U.S. should have taken to prevent hacking. Republicans in Congress haven't done anything yet to repeal Obamacare, by the way, secure the border, or fix the federal government in any way. But it's good to know they're at least staying busy, even if it's by obsessing over an issue that may or may not be relevant. We'll keep you updated on what they do. Up next, Mike Rowe is here. The former Dirty Jobs host brought his plan to fix America's unemployment crisis to Capitol Hill. He'll share that plan next. And then President Trump promised to put America first in his speech last night. But defiant Democrats in Congress don't like the sound of that. Many responded to his promises by refusing to clap or stand. We'll talk to one who went even farther, who said Hitler could have written portions of that speech last night. That's next. Mike Rowe is a longtime host of Dirty Jobs, biggest show in cable. Somebody's got to do it, and many other programs, what people actually do for a living here in America. He was in Washington to testify on Capitol Hill about the student loan crisis, the skills gap, and vocational education in high school. In short, he is the man, and he joins us now. Great to see you, Mike.
Good to see you.
So you've sent a series of letters to presidents, to this president, to the president before.
Sure.
And they basically have the same gist. The problem has been unresolved. What's the core problem?
Well, the core problem is nobody really knows how to talk about the skills gap, in my opinion, because there's a there's a belief and a narrative in the country that says we can cure unemployment by creating more opportunity.
Right.
And obviously there's some truth to it, but the skills gap has nothing to do with unemployment, not really. The skills gap proves that opportunity alone isn't enough to get people unemployed.
Right.
Right? And really neither is training. You can have all the opportunity and all the training in the world, but if you don't have an underlying appreciation for the work, if you're not talking about jobs that people affirmatively aspire to, you're going to be pushing the boulder up the hill or tilting at the windmill or whatever self-defeating metaphor makes the most sense to you. It's a sucker's bet. You have to be talking about jobs that are uniformly cared about in order to move the needle.
So you can have a job available, but if no one can do it, the job remains unfilled.
5.6 million jobs exist right now as we're talking. 5.6 million jobs, 75% of which don't require a four-year degree. When people talk about, why the skills gap exists, it's almost, how can it not exist? We took Votech out of high school. At the same time, we told an entire generation that their best hope for success was a four-year degree.
Right.
So the most expensive path becomes the best path for the most people. At the same time, all these other jobs, which are linked to this very fundamental form of education, are completely marginalized because we sent a really powerful message. You don't just take vocational technical training out of high schools and that be the end of it. That sets all kinds of dominoes in place, and none of them are pretty, and they all fall down.
So I hate to be political, but we are in Washington. These things don't happen without forces moving them to happen. There's a massive lobby fielded by the four-year education industry. Do you think that has something to do with it?
Oh, God. Look, okay. The skills gap isn't a mystery because it's a reflection of what we value. The cost of college isn't a mystery, I believe, for the same reasons. Yeah, there's a lobby, but it's not just the Washington lobby. It's parents who very rationally want something better for their kids than they had. What does that mean? We got to figure it out. But they're guidance counselors on the front line who are incentivized to push kids toward college as well. So guidance counselors too often don't talk about the alternative careers, which, by the way, fun word, right? Higher education over here, alternative education over here if you're not cut out for this. So in 1,000 ways, we give kids dozens of cues and clues as to what success looks like. As a result, the jobs we're talking about today on the Hill, these are important jobs that just haven't been celebrated. That's why they're going begging. So regarding student loans, yeah, $1.3 trillion is a lot of money to hold, but we made an unlimited pile of money available. We told everybody that the best path for the most people was a four-year degree, and, well, of course, they borrowed until they borrowed no more, and colleges compete with each other, so the price goes up faster than real estate, faster than food, faster than energy, faster than healthcare. Never before in the history of Western civilization has anything so important become so expensive so quickly.
Yeah, and much faster than inflation. What we haven't done is readjusted our expectations based on reality. So we have a pretty illustrative graphic here. So we have on the one side a letter that you sent to President Obama outlining these problems. Here's the letter that you sent to President Trump, and you basically scratched out the name of the president and sent the same letter.
So I was literally driving down here yesterday, and I found this old letter. I did exactly as you said, and I wrote a little thing on Facebook just telling my friends where I was going and why. I got here. It's been shared 18,000 times. It's reached 4 million people. People want to talk about this. But look, the truth is, I don't know what else to do. I mean, I came here in 2001, testified to the Committee of Transportation, Science, and Commerce. Came back in 2013, testified to the Senate Committee on Natural Resources. Came back today, talked to education and the workforce. What are you going to do? You know, that's what I mean. A lot of good people are pushing the boulder up the hill.
Yes.
But until and unless we change, I hate to sound like I'm running for something. I'm not. But you're talking about hearts and minds of guidance counselors and parents. So we can do and say all kinds of things on the Hill. And the Perkins Act is important. I hope it gets through this time. It looks like it might. But regardless, the real wet work happens around the kitchen table, and if it's not a topic of conversation, that 5.6 million number is going to be twice as big in 5 years, because 5 years ago it was 2.5.
Exactly.
So it's just math.
So here's the last question. Do you think that we value as a society work in the way that we once did? Maybe that's part of the problem.
At the risk of being glib, I would say if you really want to make America great again, you got to make work cool again.
Yes.
And I know that sounds a little high schooly, but look, that's where the action is. There's a long list of stuff we can't control, but it is completely in our power to decide what the definition of a good job is. That's up to us, right? So if we disparage and malign an entire category of perfectly reasonable opportunities, then it's not the out-of-work worker who's going to pay the ultimate price. It's people like you and me who are addicted to smooth roads, affordable energy, indoor plumbing, and all that stuff.
That's right. I don't think it's a glib answer at all. I think it's deep.
It's not bad. You know, it really isn't bad. If you want to make the country great again, you got to make work cool.
I think that's right. And work confers dignity. I mean, that's the best part about it.
I kind of feel like I should look into a camera and say that with all the earnestness I can muster. If you want to make America great again, you've got to make work cool again.
Mike Rowe, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Up next, Democrats obviously don't care for President Trump's agenda, but is he even causing them to reject patriotism and common sense? Based on last night, that's an open question. We'll talk to a Democrat who thinks his speech was closer to something a fascist would give than an American. That's up ahead. You can hardly expect Democrats to be enthusiastic about a speech by President Trump, but some may have gone pretty far in their hostility, conflating anger with Trump with rage against the country itself. For example, many declined last night to stand or clap when the president said all Americans are created the same by God. For more, we go now to Fox News correspondent Trace Gallagher. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker. In his speech, President Trump said that Democrats and Republicans should unite. Instead, they stood and sat divided. And the proof really is in the pictures. Watch Republicans on the right-hand side of your screen, Democrats on the left.
My job is not to represent the world. My job is to represent the United States of America.
If you look close, you may notice 3 Democratic senators did stand for the president again and again. West Virginia's Joe Manchin, Indiana's Joe Donnelly, and Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota. All 3 are moderates in swing states facing tough re-election campaigns. But other Democrats were visibly critical of the speech, at times groaning, laughing, hissing, with the occasional thumbs down. And according to the National Review, New York Congressman Eliot Engel sat and talked on his cell phone. Even when Trump condemned the desecration of Jewish cemeteries, dozens of Democrats refused to stand. But House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said she thought her members listened with dignity. In other words, according to Pelosi, they didn't boo. Here's how Pelosi herself reacted. Watch.
And will create tens of thousands of new American jobs.
And it appears Democrats' response was planned in advance, as lawmakers reportedly were advised by the party leadership on how to react. Watch a little bit more.
America must put its own citizens first, because only then can we truly make America great again.
And when the president finished, Democrats ran for the exits and in many cases quickly got on television to, of course, criticize the president's speech. Tucker.
Thanks a lot, Trace. Appreciate it. Well, President Trump's speech was well received by a lot of people, even a handful of Democratic commentators. One person who was far from happy, though, was attorney Eric Guster, who was enraged. He tweeted during the speech, "Did Hitler draft part of this speech?" He also tweeted that you are the civil rights issue of our time. POTUS. Strong words. Eric Guster joins us tonight from Birmingham. So, Eric, I've known you a long time. I think you're a pretty reasonable guy, smart guy, lawyer.
Yeah,
I see what's happening to you as something that's very similar to what's happening to a lot of Democrats I know in Washington. You dislike Trump so much, his personal affect is so offensive to you, that you can't hear clearly what he says. You're possessed, and it's affecting your judgment.
That is the most ridiculous thing I've heard within the last 24 hours, besides some of the lines in Trump's speech. I do not totally dislike Donald Trump. What I'm disliking is his message and the things that he says about people and the hatred that he's incited in people, and him not speaking out against the racial hatred that is done in his name, the attacks on Muslims, the attacks on blacks, the attacks on Jewish cemeteries that he's touched on a little bit in the last few days, but not forcefully enough. So those are things I'm totally against.
So I don't even plan to address directly your tweet comparing him to Hitler, because I think it's embarrassing to you. But I want to get to what you just said.
No, you read it. You read it.
I know, but I'm embarrassed to bring it directly to you because I think you're above that, and I think it diminishes you. But let me ask you about what you just said. You said Trump's speech last night contained racial hatred. I watched the whole thing. I don't think anyone could agree with all of it, but where was the race hatred in it?
Trump has had a message of racial hate throughout this campaign, throughout his presidency that's only, a few weeks old. But what Trump has done is he has created this racial divide between Mexicans and Americans, between immigrants and Americans. So what he's done is created this divide, and that's what I mean in reference to the Hitler comment, in that Hitler used immigration and racism as their base, and that is what Trump has done. For example, I'm in Alabama.
It's just so stupid. I don't even know what
let me finish.
Okay, please finish quickly.
Let me finish.
And get to a smart point.
For example, he was in Alabama, and there were rebel flags and people who were saying racial things to protesters, and that was something that incited his base. And those are things I'm speaking of in reference to Hitler, not saying he is Hitler, but he's Hitler-esque. Absolutely.
Okay. So he was in Alabama, and there were Confederate flags around. Therefore, he's worthy of being compared to Hitler. Look, so let's just stay.
We're talking about the racial undertone that he has never addressed.
Last night.
No. That is a topic. He's had racial undertones throughout his campaign that he never addressed, not even once. And that's a shame on him being the leader of the free world.
Did you watch the speech last night? Because he opened up.
I watched.
But he opened the speech by saying there have been incidents of racial bias and they're wrong and I disavow them. I mean, did you miss that, or do you think he's lying, or what should he have done exactly? I'm trying to take you seriously, Eric.
I will give him a gold star and a cookie for that moment, but we have to look at a person's actions. Words are very cheap. It's very easy to say words, but it goes back to actions.
What
Even
actions?
With
I'm
trying
to keep myself. What are you talking about? What has he done as an act of racial bias? Please.
No. For example, when we talk about unfair policing in communities of color and poor communities, Jeff Sessions gave a speech within the last 2 days where he was saying that they're going to stop suing police departments in reference to these things. So those are things that we're talking about.
We've had a black president for the past 8 years. For the past 8 years, we've had an African-American president during the exact period where you say that racial bias in our police departments is out of control. So Donald Trump has been the president for a matter of mere months. So I don't think I said that. I want to get to something specific that he said, that the Democrats said last night. So Trump, in his speech... No, you said that I said it's out of control. I said Jeff Sessions gave a speech where he said that he would stop suing police departments. That's very concerning to many people, including myself as a civil rights lawyer.
when the Department of Justice is being told that they're not going to sue police departments and give consent decrees to tell them that they have to stop racial bias, they have to stop unfair policing, that's a problem and very concerning with a lot of people.
You've had 8 years of an Obama Justice Department, an Obama Civil Rights Division, indeed an Obama presidency, and that bias, according to you and other so-called civil rights lawyers, has flowered. And I'm merely saying, if your real concern is racial bias and not just dumb partisanship, and I'm having trouble believing that, then you would have said something about the Obama administration's failure to take that on over 8 years in office. But let me get back to last night in a concrete example.
No.
I'm
not going to let that comment hang. Okay. No, the Department of Justice under Obama took on several issues of racial bias. The Department of Justice was extremely active in weeding out police departments.
So in Baltimore and in Ferguson, where you clearly saw racial bias at work, I talked to you at the time. I don't remember you holding the president accountable for that. But again, this is one of those cul-de-sacs that's not worth exploring. Let me ask you a very discreet question about last night. So Trump gets up there and says, there are victims of crime by immigrants. And the second he says that, and there are, of course, I mean, there's really no dispute about that. Democrats in the chamber, members of Congress, all but boo him. They bark at him. They express verbally their displeasure. And my question is, why? Why is it offensive to note the truth that there actually are Americans who've been harmed and killed by immigrants? Why is that bad to note? And by the way, whose side are you on if you're offended by that?
No. It's not bad to note that, but we also must note the violence that is perpetuated by white nationalists. The violence such as the Charleston 9, which he has not mentioned. The mosque that was attacked in Canada, which he has not mentioned. He has not spoken out against white supremacists who've done very similar things that he's trying to blame on the immigrants. Those are the real dangers within our country.
You're kind of missing my question.
Homegrown terrorists.
I'm
answering your question, but you don't want the answer.
Why would Democrats? The Charleston 9 happened when Obama was president. Like, this is. I'm losing patience, but I just want to get to the. I just want to get to this one question. Why would that make Democrats mad that he said that? And they were mad. They groaned audibly. It was picked up on mics. Why would that annoy them so much that he was noting that immigrants have hurt Americans? Like, what's wrong with saying that? Can you answer that question?
There's nothing wrong with saying that, but he's totally ignored the things I talked about. The white nationalists and the white supremacists who are attacking people on a weekly basis.
I'm out of time, Eric.
He totally ignored that.
It's too frustrating.
I hate you don't want the truth, Tucker.
Unwilling to deal with reason. Thanks a lot for joining us. Coming up next, the European Union is trying to censor the speech of lawmakers who express ideas the commissars don't like. Is the continent's 300-year experiment with free speech ending before our eyes? We'll talk to the parliamentarian who is promoting censorship abroad.
Headlines, the biggest issues broken down by some of the sharpest opinions out there. Harris Faulkner, Sandra Smith, Meghan McCain, and one lucky guy have the perspective you won't find anywhere else. Catch Outnumbered weekdays at noon on the Fox News Channel.
Well, free speech continues to die a sad death on the continent that created it. Until now, members of the European Parliament in Brussels have enjoyed almost absolute freedom of speech, as you would expect in a civilized land. But now the president of the parliament has been given new powers. If he decides a member's ideas are racist or xenophobic, he can halt the television broadcast of that speech and also purge the video from parliamentary archives, making it as though the speech never happened. Richard Corbett is a member of the British Labour Party. He represents Yorkshire and the Humber in the European Parliament. He was a top proponent of this new measure. Mr. Corbett, thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
So can you be specific as to which ideas you're banning? What are the standards for ideas that are not allowed to be expressed, and who decides?
The Parliament as a whole voted for this measure to prohibit the use of racist and xenophobic language, and empowered the President as a fallback, as a safeguard in certain cases, to be able to stop the live transmission of broadcasts. Now, this is of course, something that is quite, on the face of it, quite draconian. So the presiding officer, the Speaker of the Parliament, as it were, is only likely to use this in an extreme situation. What concerned the Parliament, and this rule, by the way, was worked on by a working group with all the different party groupings in the Parliament, from the left to the right, right across the spectrum, What they were worried about was what happens if in the European Parliament, which, by the way, is elected by proportional representation, so we have a very wide range of views in the European Parliament, what happens if a group of members come in, for instance, with banners and start saying things like, you know, all Jews to the gas chamber or something like that? Should they be able to use the broadcasting facilities of the Parliament to get that message out to a wider public? There was nothing the President could do at the moment. Now there is this option of being able to say, hang on a minute, this is not something that should be broadcast live.
But again, what's the standard?
It'll still be there on the parliamentary record, but it won't be broadcast live.
But I don't think that anyone, I mean, it goes without saying, no normal person would defend an idea like that. It's appalling. But it won't be limited to that. It never is. So what's the specific standard? What qualifies as racist or xenophobic? If I'm opposed to, for example, immigration into my country from a certain part of the world, that's a legitimate political point of view, but it could also be described as xenophobic. So would that be banned? And who decides?
No, well, the standard discussion in Europe on that would not normally classify that as being racist, to say that you are opposed to immigration. If you said, I'm opposed to any more blacks coming to my country, or we're too full of Jews, that would be racist or xenophobic,
but how
and that
do we
would
know?
be questioned.
Is,
but
I mean,
not to say that you're against immigration.
Okay, so being specific about it or saying something that you find ugly, but again, I mean, this is an important thing. You're banning ideas from being transmitted. So how do we know which ones are banned? What's the standard? Or is it just up to the discretion of somebody? And if so, who is that person?
Well, it's in the immediate up to the Speaker of the Parliament, whoever is chairing the debate in the Parliament, who is elected by all members of Parliament and who is duty-bound to act in a reasonable and unbiased way. The decision, by the way, can be subject then to an appeal to the Bureau of the Parliament. That's elected by the Parliament with members from all the different political factions in the Parliament, right across the spectrum.
Did anybody...
But the immediate decision is the Speaker.
Okay, but did anybody acknowledge that this is a totalitarian measure? And wouldn't it be better just to make a counter case? If you hear something you find unattractive or wrong, isn't the traditional European response to counter it with what you think is right? And may the most reasonable position win in the eyes of those watching?
Until last week, these were measures agreed last year by the European Parliament. Until last week, when somebody ran with a news story on it claiming it was totalitarian, I had never heard any member of the European Parliament claim that this was a totalitarian measure.
Preventing people from expressing their views in
newspaper
public?
Claiming that.
Well, would you agree?
They're not prevented from expressing their views. They're simply forbidden. The Parliament may stop the transmission if they are using racist and xenophobic language. Now, the way that would be interpreted in a Parliament, which by definition is for pluralism and a plurality of views and for letting a variety of views be expressed, the standard of saying this is beyond the pale will be quite a high standard. You're not going to rule it out for any off-the-cuff remark by some single member.
Well,
if there is an organised group of members going out, we'll see. Well, we will indeed see, and I can assure you that you won't have willy-nilly some guy saying, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that.
But this is a response.
This is a parliament, for heaven's sake. It's a pluralist parliament.
Well, it's not. It's an authoritarian parliament that doesn't that wants to ban ideas it disagrees with, obviously. But let me just ask this. Do you believe you can stop populism by banning the ideas behind it?
Well, what we shouldn't do is give succor to those who want to spread hate speech, hate messages, demonizing particular races or religions. That's what this is targeted at, not the ordinary diversity of views. That will go on. There's no problem with that. And you know, this is a fallback safeguard provision in case of absolute necessity.
Okay. It's also Orwellian, but I appreciate your explaining it to us. Mr. Corbett, thanks.
Okay.
Up next, we'll welcome a journalist who spent 2 years as a hostage of Islamic radicals in Syria and, unlike so many others, lived to tell the tale. That's next. Not many men have stared Islamic radicalism in its hairy, smelly, and altogether unpleasant face. Even fewer have done so and survived. One man who has is Theo Padnos. He's a freelance journalist who was abducted in 2012 by al-Nusra, an al-Qaeda-linked group in Syria that is fighting the Assad regime. After 2 years of torment and multiple failed escape attempts, he was finally released in late 2014. He's able to tell his incredible story to the world. Theo Padnos joins us now from Paris. Theo, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So I've always wondered, yours is a remarkable story, and the first moment I read it, my first thought was 2 years is such a long time to be in captivity. Did you find yourself identifying with the beliefs of your captors?
No, not identifying. I mean, I try to understand them. I mean,
yes.
They have there's an elaborate philosophy that they're following. There's libraries of information and texts, and of course I tried to understand what they were thinking and what they were reading, and but identifying, no, I mean, I'm not. They're murdering people in the street. Yes. They employ children as torturers. They are destroying the society over there. No, I didn't identify with them.
Well, how did you keep from doing that?
I hated them for this.
Well, good for you. How did you keep from doing it? You read so many accounts of people who their defenses break down after a while, but yours didn't. How?
I mean, listen, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make you like them. In that respect, yes, they want you to support their cause. They want you to love and respect them as individuals. And because I knew what they were doing, I knew what they had done to me, and I knew what they were doing to my fellow prisoners. There was, there was no conceivable likelihood that I could respect or admire them for what they were doing. Of course not.
What were they driven by?
What are they driven by? This is a good question. I mean, some of them are interested in money. Some of them are interested in power. Some of them love the guns. You know, they're having a wonderful time during the jihad. This is an important aspect of the jihad that we don't really understand or appreciate in the West. But they all have guns. They have the keys to these cool pickup trucks. They have free food. They can summon people off the street and begin to, they imprison people. They're constructing a real prison archipelago over there for their prisoners and for anyone they really don't like. So, an incredible access of power to many young men who have had none over, for most of their lives. So this is it's a dangerous scenario that's unfolding over there in those parts of Syria that the government does not control.
Huh. What's your view of the Assad regime, whom they are fighting?
I mean, the Assad regime right now, there are approximately 16 million people there who are living in safety. The schools function, the universities function, the hospitals function. I mean, there's traffic police in the streets. Listen, it's not Switzerland. It's not a perfect society. I think they themselves recognize this. But anybody who wants peace in Syria will acknowledge and respect the peace that they have at the moment, and not try to degrade it or damage it somehow, which the Obama administration was doing by sending missiles and all kinds of weaponry to the rebels, which I thought was it was disgraceful because it destroyed such peace as there was.
Huh. The peace that was secured by the Assad regime, which is, as you know, routinely denounced here as monstrous.
Hold on. There was a situation, there remains a situation in which there are rebel enclaves, and these rebel enclaves are not peaceful. Of course not. No, they're being destroyed. And I mean, it's a civil war. Look, it's a civil war. But yes. The rebel enclaves are just a minority of the population lives there, and the majority of Syrians are living in relative peace under the Assad regime. And yes, that is preferable to bombing and to the crucifixions in the streets that we're seeing, and to the murdering of citizens and the torturing and the imprisoning of random people, which is what they're doing.
Yes. So we don't have a lot of time left, but just give us a short summation of how you got out when so many didn't.
This is a good question. There was a humanitarian intervention that was really carried out by the nation of Qatar. I don't think the American officials had much to do with it, but I have my freedom really to thank. I have to thank Qatar for my freedom.
Amazing. Theo Padnos, it's quite a story. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, tonight we want to bring you an important update in the case of Sabrina D'Souza. She's an American citizen who is facing a lengthy prison term for her alleged role in a CIA operation that went wrong. We'll tell you what happened next.